So welcome YouTube. What's up? Today is going to be a project help day. Today was going to be about web frameworks, and it still kind of is. But the problem with web frameworks is looking through your checkpoint 1 code, most of y'all already, I'd say every team is already at the point where you've already done what I was going to talk about today. So it's, I don't know. It's a little too late for that because it'd be boring as all hell because you wouldn't be getting anything new out of it. I'm still going to talk about web frameworks, but in the context of project help. So in chat, I'm going to play off chat today. Anything you want to see to help with your project, the whole day I'm playing off chat. This is all unscripted. Especially reports that you want to see. You're using a web framework. Great. What I was going to talk about today in lecture was using a web framework, which is mostly just read the documentation and call the methods that do the things. There's not much to talk about there. But where there is something to talk about is generating the reports for those web frameworks. So great, I used this web framework. It just did the thing for me. So what I'd like to do is a demo of going through a report. And whatever's suggested in chat, that's what I'll do a report of. If there's something where a few of you are suggesting the same thing, and if it's a huge library, a specific part of that library, I'll go through like how that library handles, how that web framework handles parsing HTTP headers, for example. I can go through a demo of that, go through the source code of that library, find where it does that, and then talk about how to turn that into a report. Just make sure we're all on the same page with that. Or if there's demand for deployment, that's fine too. And question in chat, what if we don't care about any of that and we want to talk about the homeworks? That's cool too. Whatever chat wants, that's what chat's going to get. If somebody asks about homework and you're like, hey, I don't want to talk about homework, I want to talk about project, get your keyboard there and say, hey, I want to talk about the project. Here's a specific suggestion. Then I'll talk about that. So I'm at your mercy today. Let me know what I'm talking about. I wanted something queued up before lecture started, but all the questions chat had before lecture, I was able to answer before lecture. And they weren't about reports. So I'd like to talk about reports. Yeah, and you can ask about the homework stuff, especially with homework 5 coming up, if that's what you all want to talk about. The question in chat is about homework 4 grades. Like, I'm not going to answer questions about your grades during stream. That doesn't apply to anyone else. Oh my goodness, Danaski. No, I'm not answering that on stream. I'm not answering a question that applies specifically to you during lecture. That's ridiculous. Your feedback says you should know better than that too. Your feedback says who the grader is. They're the person to contact. Ask them if you think it's an unfair call. Get me involved. If they're having questions about it, they'll get me involved. That's why we put the grader on all your feedback, the actual grader. Yeah, but grades are posted for homework 4. They are live. And I realized homework 2 regrades, I had them uploaded to Autolab for a while, but I forgot to click release all grades. Somebody finally was like, where's my homework 2 grade? I was about to answer them like, they've been on Autolab for, I think it was like 4 days at the time. They've been on Autolab for 4 days. Just check Autolab. Why are you bugging me with this? I'm like, let me double check first. I double checked and nope, they were in Autolab, but they weren't released, so you couldn't see them. So I apologize for that. One missed button click. And I do, so if, and our timeline for grading, by the way, is getting your grades out 1 week after the homework deadline. And then the following week, the TAs do the regrades. So 2 weeks after you submit regrades, you should see your regrades done. If you don't see them by that time, that's when you can start bugging me and be like, yo, Jesse, where the hell are those regrades? And sometimes, that can be helpful because at this point we did hit the deadline. The TAs did a fantastic job, got it all done. I uploaded them to Autolab at just one button. And this is, I've told this story earlier this semester, but you could do all the work. You can do everything perfectly correct, but if you just miss one button click at the end of the process, the release to customers, I tell the story in the context of releasing software to users, to end users. you don't click that release button or you don't push to GitHub, it's effectively like you haven't done it. So unfortunately, it was like we didn't even do the regrading. A report demo on Flask parsing HTTP. Let me actually do it like this. Let's start getting a list of Flask. Oh, where was it? Flask parsing HTTP headers. If you do your own token generator to get the entropy, that's fine. And we're not gonna be in there measuring entropy and taking log base 2 and stuff. As long as you have good looking tokens, we're gonna be okay with that. For practice, when you're out there in the real world, make sure you have strong tokens. For this homework, as long as you clearly got the idea of a token, we're okay with that. But yeah, you don't want to make your own token generator. But I don't have a suggestion for a library. I would just be Googling it. Bcrypt will generate tokens for you. I would say just use Bcrypt. But I've already suggested Bcrypt. If they ain't doing it for you, I don't know what to tell you. Especially without knowing your language. But what I would do is take your language and just Google it. Language, secure token generator, lots of entropy. Something like that. Suggestions for a friend if a project were to use no frameworks and built off the homework would be some concerns to keep in mind. That's hard, is the concern to keep in mind. You're not saving time, I'll tell you that much. There's a sweet spot in this course of how much reliance on libraries to use to minimize your work, and it's definitely not no frameworks. And it's definitely not frameworks that do a ton for you. There's somewhere in the middle that's a really sweet spot where you just use a minimal amount of libraries to do the things that would take you a long time to do. A few teams did try no frameworks last year. None of them even came close to finishing the project. That's a tall order. That's tough. You're welcome to try. The policy is you can't use your homework code until after the deadline, so you can't use your auth homework code yet for checkpoint 2. But you can use homeworks 1 through 4 as of right now. And you can add your auth after the second checkpoint, after Friday. Do I actually grade any of the assignments? I did a couple on homework 4. I only grade them when there's an issue. If I need to come in and make judgment calls with my unlimited authority, that's when I come in and grade a few. Usually if something's pretty broken. If you have a anywhere decent to good submission, I'm not going to be your grader. Sorry to the people who have me as a grader, but you know what? They're probably not showing up to lecture because that's why they had those types of submissions. You do an example. Hey, second request for Flask. All right, looks like Flask is it. Like the functions, like render template. Flask. Flask is basically a works. I can't pronounce that one. Report. Yeah, Flask offloads a lot to that. Need to talk to you about my grade then. Oh, I'm your grader for that? Yeah, Max. If you had me as a grader, something went wrong with your submission. We can talk. And by the way, when you ever have questions, like I just answered a few people over email the other day. I think just yesterday, who have been waiting like a week and a half or so for a response from me. I got pretty far behind on those. If you go to office hours, my office hours on Wednesday, you're gonna guarantee you'll get an answer. Like I won't let you leave without giving you a final answer on your grade. Like just come to my office hours. Office hours are pretty underutilized in this class. Lecture is pretty underutilized in this class. Yet there are students who just email me and say, "Fix my issues." I don't know, show up to participate in the class at all. Anyway, I'm not doing that rant today. Let's get rid of this note. And Flask HTTP headers and templates. let's just go into the Flask library and muck around. So what I recommend when you're going through a library like this is to not use GitHub. You do have to use GitHub to get the end link. But in the meantime, oh, this doesn't even have a... oh, there it is. Okay. Whew. All right, so let's add Flask to this project. What Flask. What I recommend you do is go into an IDE that's going to give you a lot more ability to navigate the code. So I'm going to go install that library, add it to my requirements, make sure I have that installed locally. It's still installing right now. And then I'm going to use my IDE to navigate the code. GitHub has gotten a lot better about letting you navigate the code. It used to just be a text dump and it wasn't navigable at all. It's better now. There was one addition that I believe Microsoft made that was a definite positive. But it's still not great. Like, it's not really made for navigating code. It's made for hosting your GitHub repos, or your Git repos, sorry. So I recommend going into an IDE. Import Flask. And then your best friend here, probably the keyboard shortcut I use the most in my IDE, that's a real lifesaver, is Control-Click. It's going to take you to the source of whatever you just clicked on. If you click on a variable, it'll take you to where that variable was declared. You click on a method or a class, it's going to take you to where that method or class is defined. Very helpful, especially when finding the source code for these reports. So it took me right to the Flask library, and I have all of the source for Flask, and I can start navigating this. And we should be able to scroll down and see that I assume that's German. I can't pronounce it, though. It's going to take us right there. That's going to be right here as well. So you're not, like in GitHub, you're going to be finding the next GitHub repository and bouncing between repositories, especially if you're using Node. My goodness, if you're using Node, which I would like to do a Node example too. Nobody suggested it. I'm not going to go through it if nobody suggests it. But go into your Node modules and navigate your Node modules directory. It has all of your dependencies, and their dependencies. You can go through here and find what you're looking for significantly faster than if you're going through GitHub. Like, for example, this is an entire library right here. NPM is notorious for this, having tons and tons of very small libraries. If you're doing this through GitHub, and you're saying, okay, here's my library that does text alignment. It uses 3 other libraries, and now you're finding just off of this line, you're trying to find some library named longest, trying to find its GitHub repo. What a pain. In your NPM stuff, you just scroll to the L's. Longest. Here's the source code for that library. It's probably also a tiny library. This doesn't have any dependencies, so this is like I guess we'd call it a root library. It doesn't have any dependencies, so you found like the start of the path at that point. So we're in Flask. What were the specific demands? HTTP headers. Let's see where Flask is going to parse headers. I'm just going to kind of navigate through this. You could try to go into your code and try to narrow it down initially a lot more first. I'm just going to navigate this thing and try to find it. Make a framework based on this. I'm just going to call that W or were. Call it were. Based on were. So somewhere in here, we're going to see import were. Probably somewhere in here. App. From app, import Flask. So app, not too surprisingly, is going to be our first entry point. There's all our were stuff. Routing, import base response from were. That's probably where we want to go next. Lots of documentation that I'm not going to sit here and read on stream. Bunch of default configuration. Nice. some fun stuff. And you're gonna find that every time I do this, I learn something cool about a new library, about a library I've used. You're likewise gonna find the same thing. All kinds of stuff. This is what defines a Flask app. These are all the variables and methods involved in a Flask app. We're already at line 1,000 here. I'm not just gonna scroll through everything. Let me search for headers. Headers equals none. Response class. Make sure the body is an instance of the response class. Let's go to response. We're still in Flask. It's going to extend response base and JSON mixin. Has a default MIME type, a max cookie size, which is in the configuration. Cool. Response base is what we're going to want. And this, yeah, I expect it to jump to the where library. So now we're in the where library. And a response extends base response, e-tag response, mixin, a bunch of mixins. The base response looks like where the action is going to be. It's probably up in the same file, in the response file. Base response, nice documentation. Not going to take the time to read that. Uses UTF-8. Default status is 200 OK. MIME type, default MIME type is text plain. Automatically set context length, cool. Max cookie size is 4K. That's huge, actually. It's a large. Like, that's going to overload a lot of servers, isn't it? That could cause some issues if you have 4K cookies. Surprised it allows that. Call on close, force type. Data, self.headers. Headers. Okay, that's data structures, which we saw imported from Flask itself, from the top level Flask. Getting somewhere. Get list, get all, remove pop. Oh, this is literally, they actually rebuilt their own data structure. It sounds like, I wonder what their exact reason to do that was. What functionality in here they needed over a Python dictionary. It looks like this is literally just data structure stuff. Yeah, in Office, yeah, Piazza, I don't know. We haven't been great about Piazza, admittedly. But if you come to office hours, you know you're getting your question answered. I do stay after hours for office hours. If there's a queue, I'm gonna stay there till that queue's empty. Like I'm not gonna just abandon you after you waited, an hour or so. If you show up after the end of office hours, then I might just say hi and then leave. But if you've been waiting there patiently, I'm gonna see you. Which browser do you use to test? I mean, your app should work on all browsers. If you know it works on Firefox and errors on Chrome, you did something wrong. I just handled a few regrade requests, and whenever it's an issue like that, it's because you're hard coding to your specific browser and not implementing the protocol properly. So yeah, great. It works on the browser that you used for testing because you're just playing guess and check. You make a change and you just try things in your browser until something works. Well, guess what? You hard coded it to your browser and it doesn't work in any other browser. That shouldn't be surprising. If you're reading the documentation, watching lectures, and coding to the actual protocol, then you're not going to have issues like that. Any recommendations for node libraries to use bcrypt? Bcrypt, but there's also Passport, I believe it's called in Node, is pretty much the standard auth library. When is OH? Muffin Man, get out of here. You're not even in this class. Don't answer him. Don't answer Muffin Man. Yeah, good. Give him the Piazza link because he doesn't have access to that. Yeah, don't tell him. Nobody tell him. All right. So headers. Let's see where we're actually parsing these damn headers. I think I want to go to add, and here's another thing I like to use is find usages. This actually does exist in the new GitHub. That's the method name. In Flask? Are we heading back to Flask? Just only when setting cookies? I can't see. Oh, way at the bottom here. Routing looks like a good one. Oh, come on. I can't see this either. I'd have to look. Self arguments add. I feel like we're a little bit off the path that we want to be on. Let's see what the So I'm going to take a different approach. I think we're about hitting a dead end with now that we've gotten into the headers. Let me scan through this HTTP. Bunch of regex. Regex is it's the one time where I always put comments in my code is regex, and I see this library they're doing the same thing. Regex is completely unreadable. You like who can read this without taking at least an hour? Even if you're really good at regex, like you're gonna have to sit there and parse that whole thing yourself. Regex is awful for syntax and readability. By the way, this does take a while. You should expect navigating these libraries to take a while. That's why I want to do this. Oh, by the way, that's why I want to do this as a live demo. I don't want to just say, here's one where I already did it off stream, and look, here's the answer. Because that really hides how long this should take you. Parse dictionary header. How did we get it into a dictionary? That's what I want to know. So I'm going to switch my strategy a little bit at this point. There's auth in here? Huh. So I'm going to switch my strategy a little bit here. And I'm going to right click this and say find in files, which used to be find in path. It confuses me now because they changed the name of something. And I'm going to look for... Oh, come on. Do I need to do that as a string? Oh no. I was hoping that one would work. I just look for /r/n. Let me look in the comments. Non-breaking space. Maybe there'll be a comment for it. Non-breaking space. CRLF. Yeah, how come I can't find that? Probably because it's escaped. All right, now we're cooking. Let's look at where we are. Make line iter. It's going to split the lines. You think it's in the Python library? We'll find it. We will find it. Make, well, let's see where we are right now. And we're in the word library. CRLF. In CRLF. If item and. It's kind of strange. Okay, you think it uses base HTTP handler? So let's go to HTTP. This is all a bunch of functions. Where's the class? Oh, there are no classes in this file. This is just a whole bunch of helper libraries. How did I get so far away? I thought we were so close to this. I was getting so confident. Try serving.py. Ooh, yeah. Okay. Check, getting us back on track. Thank you. Thanks, Pockets. With the threading, so we got a threading socket server. Ooh, yeah. This is the good stuff. This is the stuff you had to do on homework. Oh. Base HTTP request handler, that's where we want to head. Let's just take a quick look at what's going on here. WSGI stuff. Header keys. Headers an empty set for key value in response headers. Which comes from the library that we're about to head to. Handle base HTTP request handler dot handle. That's where we want to head. And then it only calls the base library? Wait a minute. Oh, because you would override this as the user of the library. You would add your stuff to it. Okay, so let's head over to where we want to be. Handle, oh, come on. Handle 1. Did that go right back to where we were? No, it just went right up in the same file. Read line. URI too long. 65K for the limit of an HTTP request. Parse request. Yes, please. Request version. My goodness, this is almost taking a whole lecture just to do one of these. I'm telling you, it should take a while. Not UTF-8 for some reason, but not ASCII either for the headers. Strange. Request line, parsing that, getting. Does splitting on empty just split on white space? Yeah. Oh, look at that. The default is split on white space. Oops. So split on white space, get your three things. Enough to determine protocol version. Starts with HTTP. Cool. Make sure it does. Version number, get that. Version number, still getting the version number, still caring about version number, still checking the version number, still checking the version number. Command and path, check if the command or the type is either get or post or etc. Getting the path for pathing. And we're only handling GET requests by default, I guess. Parse headers. Here's finally getting to exactly where we wanted to be. Parse headers. Oops, I forgot to look at what this takes. The file. So we want to read this file. No, parser. Oh, come on. You kill me. We were there. So we gotta find what extends that. Oh my goodness. Can I find declaration to go to? Oh. I see why this one was requested. This one's quite a goose chase. All right, I wanna back up a little bit in case we took a wrong turn there. So we're looking at one specific line of a header. This line is a header. Headers.append line. Okay. And then what do we do with headers after that line is appended? We join them back together. And then we give it to some parser that seemingly uses some magic to jump to a different library. Email.message. Seriously, where does email come from in this file? Import email.parser. Parser's email. Where even are we? We're in Python, which the Python documentation does this all the time, where there's just nothing. Actually, no, that isn't what this one is doing. Where there's nothing, then because it just takes you to the interface, and then you have to find the actual implementation that extends that interface. All right, parse. Feed parser, feed data. So this is where we want to go. No, I want to go to the feed parser itself. Feed parser. Why is this so impossible? Feed parser.feed is where we want to be, which we were just there, but I want to make sure we have the right implementation. Like I was just saying, I don't want to go to the interface. Is that the feed method? Feed. Put that push. Whoa! Why would we? Buffered subfile. Oh my goodness. We really gonna? We got 10 minutes. We got to get this one by the end of lecture. I didn't realize this would take. I know these take a long time, but man, I thought I'd be able to get this one a lot quicker. Headers only false. Headers only true. Like we're not even in an HTTP library at this point. And that's not even a feed. Okay, find that. If I equals 0, missing header name. Assert I greater than 0. Header name, header value. Hey, look at that. In Python email parse feeder, lines 5 something. Holy crap, we got to where header is being split by name and value. Oh my goodness. And then there's more stuff happening. If done with all lines, I'll handle the last header. In a method named Parse Headers. That sounds cool. Last header, last value. So where are all these headers going, though? We got the header and the value. I feel like it doesn't do anything with them. If last header, like, I would expect these to be put into a data structure. Yeah, I didn't think that would give us anything. And it doesn't return anything. This method has no return value. Oh, because this is a big loop. And then the last header in this loop. Oh, that's so gross. And then they handle the last one. So they set it at the end, handle it at the top, and then handle the last one differently. Oh my god. Is this real life? Is this really what they're doing? Why would they? Alright, so last header. If not last header, yeah. If last header. If last header. Still doesn't use last header. We want that to go into a data structure at some point. Now, I'm happy we found where headers are being parsed, though. Like, that would be definitely enough if you sent a link to this code. So, when you're saying, how does Flask... All right, so let me wrap this up so you at least know what to do with your report. Since we got to the mostly the bottom of this. I don't know where last header is actually being added and returned to you. But this is good enough for sure. Is So your report would give a link to this file, ideally a link to this source code. We would grab a line. I'm going to grab a line and hope that my search engine is going to find that exact thing for me. And then give a link to this line. You can click over here, copy permalink, and that'll give me a link to that exact part of that file. This looks like it might be a little different, but I think I was using Python 3.8. They might update it a little bit. Looks like they added some comments for clarity. You would give a link to that exact, oops, wrong one. You would give a link to that exact line in the GitHub repo. And your explanation for that would be chasing through what we just went through. Not in any great detail, but you'd have to say Flask uses the where library, which uses base HTTP handler or server, I forget which one it was, which uses the Python standard, which is the Python in the Python standard library, and that uses this email parser, which uses this feed parser, which finally actually parses our damn headers. What a mess of calls, though. I mean, there's reasons for it to be that way. I mean, that's not terrible unless you're actually looking through all this stuff. But yeah, it's that's a little journey. That's a journey there. So your explanation, just a few sentences. The link to the source code is the big thing I'm looking for. Did you actually go through? Because that's proof that you went through what I just went through. Or for this one in particular, it means at the very least you watched this lecture. Somebody in your team watched this lecture, so that's cool too. But that's what I expect you to go through. That would be a pain in the ass if you're going through GitHub alone. So if you don't get anything else out of this lecture, just that one tip would probably save you hours and hours and hours of time. Just going through your IDE, using Control-Click. Notice how many times I used Control-Click there. Whenever I had something, I was just Control-Clicking over to the source of that particular method or that particular class. Same with the libraries. When you just see import all this crap, well, what is that stuff? Oh, I'm just doing Control-Click, and it's going to take me exactly to that library, exactly to where that goes. It's going to save you so much time navigating this stuff. And same thing with JavaScript. I'll just show the idea real quick. And I'll of course stay after lecture. I'll talk about more. Like body parser, parses the bodies, of course. This is a little more painful because you can't Control-Click these. Oh, you can. You take that back. You can Control-Click the dependencies. See, I learned something new today. I always look at the dependency and then scroll through this and then find it. I didn't know you could click on the strings. It's handy. But body parser, this is where the body of your requests are parsed. Create parser, get, load parser by name. If you get a JSON, it's going to this library, a Json Parser, which is going to use itself. And look for all of the JSON stuff and parse these. I thought this used the library, actually. Looking at the content type. Where did this get parsed? Oh, I thought that was the whole. I thought this was the close of the function. Like, where is this getting parsed? Yep. And then actually parsing JSON, which I guess unsurprisingly just uses json.parse. Why would I think it would be anything different? So just through all that crap calls json.parse. But it does enforce. It's interesting that it enforces that it has to be either an array or an object. There's something new I learned. Yeah, well, you don't have to go too far in detail with the explanation, is what I'm saying. Getting that link to the source is crucial. Like, if you don't have the link to the source, that's a bad report. I'm not counting that as a report at all. If you have a link to the source and your details are a little bit weak, I'll be like, is this really worth giving them a 0 on the project? I don't know. Always more detail is better. If you have a lot of detail, you're guaranteed that your report's going to be good. You don't have to worry about it at all. If you start flirting with that line of, well, I don't really feel like giving more detail than this, it's a dangerous line to flirt with. Because if your reports are bad, I might just say 0. I am going to do reports on each of the 5 requirements independently. So if that's the made report for one of your 5 requirements, and your details are very weak, you're just like, well, I looked up the source code, Jesse said that was okay, it's something to do with Flask or whatever in Python, I don't know. If that's your explanation, I'm likely to just give you a 0 on your entire team is 0 on that one requirement out of the 5. If all your reports look like that, it could be a 0 on the whole project. It's not a risk worth taking unless you're taking that risk on checkpoint 2, before this checkpoint. Then you get my feedback and everything, but don't take that risk on the final submission. All right, let me end YouTube. Bye, YouTube. Peace out.